There you have it. The parlor tree is up, complete with official Aston Villa ornaments from the store. And we were millimeters from getting an early Christmas present that's automatic passage to the round of 16, millimeters away. So am I happy that we have advanced to the knockout stages of the Europa Conference League? Of course I am, but I'm also greedy and demanding. I like to think like Unai Emery. It felt a little bit like we gifted the opponent a chance to stick around and maybe contend for first. Let's talk about it. Aston Villa 2, Legia Warsaw 1. Weird vibe, strange atmosphere surrounding this match at Fortress Villa Park, what with no away support inside the ground, and then, of course, the incredible scenes outside the ground. When I see this stuff, it is utterly astonishing and surreal. Have I been transported back to the 1980s? That's what it felt like to me. And what do you think's going to happen when 3 times the amount of fans show up than what the allocation is for? And when Legia puts out a statement the way they did, it's almost as if they were fanning the flames of violence here. This is the second time in this group stage alone Legia fans have caused problems, and UEFA's got to pull their finger out and deal with this. Because imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and this was English fans for Aston Villa behaving this way in continental Europe. There should be no discrimination just because it's a smaller Polish club. Shouldn't matter. This is ridiculous. And those fans ultimately let their own club down. They weren't in the ground to support them, and they've really undermined their club and the whole competition, quite frankly. Our executive correspondent, Samir Gaby, provided that incredible footage, which is absurd to watch. And although Samir's first instinct was to go and help the police, can you imagine Samir tearing off his fancy training top to reveal the Stone Island gear beneath and then just going and filling in some Legia fans with haymakers and roundabouts and uppercuts and jabs and flurries, piling them all up to be taken away? Well, he thought about it, but he realized his first obligation was to the Holy Trinity show, for which I'm very grateful. To the game, then, as the Holy Trinity show reviews the 3 key issues and moments that defined Villa 2, Legia 1. The scoreline reflects a slender margin of victory. The statistics, though, do not. And that's what's bittersweet about this result. We even dominated the accurate long balls. I don't remember seeing a 60% rate this season or even in recent memory. One of those nearly gave us a clear passage straight to the round of 16. The 5 changes that Unai Emery made were very logical, even if he wouldn't have known until late that Villa's passage into the next stages was all confirmed with Alkmaar's win over Zrinjski at home earlier. Robin Olsen has to stay involved. John Duran needed minutes to stay connected. Ollie Watkins needs to be rested with the week ahead. And the only player you worry a little bit about with regards to minutes was probably Douglas Luiz. He went 90, and he'll be expected to do so all next week. Just on the issue of rotation, because I like talking about this kind of stuff on the show, load management is obviously a factor here, and modern sports science can determine precisely what a player's load and capacity is with supporting data. And for the first time, I heard Unai Emery in the media briefing for this match on Wednesday refer to the management of players and their minutes, given that we're heading into a Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday week, which is going to be incredibly demanding, especially when you look at, who they're playing, with 2 of those games being at home. So it's not just going to be really challenging for the manager and his technical team, video analysis, the players themselves, but think about all the support people, the physios in the treatment rooms, the dietitians. All those backroom people are going to be pushed to the max this coming week. The other thing I found very interesting from that pre-match media briefing was that Unai Emery didn't really seem fussed about finishing first or second and whether they went straight to the round of 16 or had to play another series before then. It was just about getting out of the group and to the knockout stages. Now, if you're Chris Heck, of course, you would love to have one more big game to add to the schedule. But from a managing players and their minutes perspective, that's another matter. And I'd also be very curious to know where Emi Buendia will be in his injury recovery at that stage, because by the looks of it, he's progressing nicely, and the projection for his injury was actually early February. So let's be really conservative. Let's add a month to that. If Emi Buendia is ready for early March, what a boost that will be, because potentially the fixtures could really start piling up again. Big issue. King Konza. That's what we should call him right now. King Konza. We are watching a player flourish as he heads into his absolute prime right before our eyes. And you know, central defenders often are late bloomers, but they can also prolong their careers more than the average outfield players if they take care of themselves. We always knew that Ezri Konza was fast and he was able to recover quickly. He had a 98% passing completion percentage from this game. That was 78 out of 80 passes. And that's what we've come to expect from him. He's poised on the ball now. And now he's adding this new dimension where he's taking a step forward and beating the first guy and getting past people that way, which is confidence. This is a guy who has 2 World Cups in him, 2026 and 2030. And I really hope that he's there, because we are seeing a Rolls Royce here. Some of his other stats were incredible. He was 5 for 6 on ground duels, 1 for 1 on successful dribbles, and he met the team average on accurate long balls as well, 60%, I think 3 out of 5. It is a joy to watch this player coming into his own at this stage, because a lot of us wondered, including myself, does he have it in him? Good coaching and the skills that he already had, he is blue chip, and he could be with us for 10 solid years. But it's not the numbers that make Ezri Konza's performance so impressive on Thursday. To me, it's the style of opponent and what they were up against, which is a big issue all on its own. How good Legia is at pressing all over the field with their 3-4-3, which made the job of all the defenders and Boubacar Kamara very difficult. It took a lot to unlock that first 3, the first line of confrontation. I think they pressed as well as any team that I've seen this year, and maybe even in recent history, especially at Villa Park. And if you got through that first 3, well, then they had their 4 in the 3-4-3 right there as well. So it was a demanding game, and I don't agree that Aston Villa were poor, as I read from so many people in that first half. I think they came up against an extremely disciplined, well-coached, and frankly tough team. That team looks like it's made up of a bunch of and they survived. And Unai Emery says, we're sticking with our principles. Doesn't matter if we're at home, whether we're away, whether we're in a different competition, or whether I've rotated the personnel. We are playing the same way, and we're committing to it. And that's the right thing to do. Big moment number 3, Moreno magic. What can you say about this? Alex Moreno was crucial for us down the stretch last season. A signing that we looked at initially and went, age, value, position, does this make sense? It didn't take very long for him to turn heads and make us all go, ooh, Unai Emery knows what he's talking about. His eyeballs don't lie. He's an effervescent, tidy footballer with very unique skills and a sublime first touch. And up until Thursday, he had not scored a goal for Aston Villa. So you think about this. The guy's not played since May 20th. Hamstring injury, awful injury, mentally and physically for a player, because you're always thinking, uh-oh, is it going to go? And here he is making his debut on a chilly, cold night. First game. And what does he do? He provides a monstrous moment with improvisation, basically. And what I find incredible, if you were a neutral just tuning in, you just watched that game out of interest, you knew nothing about Aston Villa at all. And I said to that person, hey, who's the guy who's been out since May 20th? you would have never picked Alex Moreno. What makes this goal amazing for me is that Alex Moreno had to stick with it. He had to track it, despite the fact it was whizzing past bodies, because Douglas Luiz serves up his second peach of a ball inside a few days that leads to a goal. And one of the guys that goes flying past is John Duran, who is absolutely mugged in the penalty area. I'm looking at that. I'm screaming for a penalty as Alex Moreno bags it. So he sticks with it or tracks it or anticipates it, somehow makes contact, and from that range, you're beating the goalkeeper. And what a moment that is, because this guy is becoming a fan favorite, I think, even though it was his return after a long absence. So what a piece of script writing by Unai Emery's screenwriters. That's Damian Vidagani, isn't it? That's his job. Big moment number 2, goal line Leon. This too was just an incredible and, again, surreal moment, because it came from one of those accurate long balls I talked about earlier. And what was astounding about it is that long ball, played inch perfectly, that beat the entire Legia team, came from who else but Robin Olsen, who presented Leon Bailey with a one-on-one opportunity against Kasper Tobias to bypass the playoff round against one of those third-place Europa League finishers that drops down into our competition, say goodbye to that, and move directly to the round of 16. Bailey just puts too much mustard on it, like a couple of calories worth, literally. This was remarkable. It was as if time stood still for me, because the ball hits the bar, bounces straight down. We don't know if it's over the line or not because it's going so fast. Then it bounces straight back up again. I've seen those hit the crossbar, bounce down, and then the backspin takes it over the line and it hits the roof of the net, but it didn't this time. The referee's watch did not buzz. They didn't get the third goal, which would have sent Villa Park into rapture and would have galvanized Leon Bailey's reputation as one of the best super subs in the game right now. And most importantly, it did not render the game in Bosnia-Herzegovina on December the 14th as a casual kickabout in which Callum Chambers might have played. Let's just hope we don't have to look back on that moment and go, geez, if it had only been 1 inch lower, what if? Just before I get to the number 1 moment, I want to sincerely thank you again for using 24/7 services for your various projects. Paul Handsaker always forwards me the notes from his clients about how happy they are with the work that was done. And there's been a lot of them come through this show, like Dave Polton, the voice of Villa Park, legend, had his bathroom redone not so long ago. James Byrne from DP World, who manages factories, and he had some intricate safety issues that had to be dealt with. And then recently, Martin Parker not only had his office done, but is now going through a massive home renovation, all with 24/7 services. And what do they all have in common, apart from being magnificent human beings, really? All lifelong Villa fans. This is a big community, and I love it when we can support one another in this community, which, by the way, is going to get bigger. There's going to be lapsed Villa fans who have kind of not engaged for a while, looking over and going, you know what? I'm excited about this again. So this is growing, and I'm really excited, and so is Paul, about the new year, because some big things are coming. And if you have a New Year's project on the horizon you want to get going, you'll always find his numbers in the descriptions of these videos. And the number 1 big moment that defined Villa 2, Legia 1, Booba's boo-boo. We score early. Isn't it funny? This played out exactly the same as how it played out in round 1 there. We had possession early. Legia comes down and basically scores on their first chance at goal. It was the same situation here. We were actually kind of under it a little bit. And then Yuri Tielemans plays a beautiful, urgent ball that sets up the goal. Yes, Moussa Diaby does the rest. And by the way, he curves it and drops it past Tobias. So we have the early lead. We've lifted the crowd. We've planted some doubt in the mind of the visitors, who are now wondering, is this potentially going to be a blowout? Like, is Villa going to get rolling here? Because the possibility was real that we could now go on and get that second goal right away. And instead, we allow Legia straight back into the game and also into the discussion for first place in the group. And the weird thing is, for once, the issue wasn't Robin Olsen's pass. I know there were a lot of anxious fans seeing the news that Robin Olsen was starting in this game, but it was really down to Boubacar Kamara. And we know that he's made mistakes in the past that have led to goals before. And what's weird in this particular case is that he wasn't really put under severe pressure, but what he didn't do, and we've all done it, he didn't shoulder check, just like on the road. You ever done that? You decided, I'm going to change lanes now, and then you hear the horn, or worse, you hear the crunch because by then it's too late. Well, this is the exact same situation. He didn't shoulder check because central midfielders are always surveying. Watch them. Watch how much they look over their shoulder to always know where other players are. He just didn't do it in the lead up to this goal. I'm being sincere when I say that I'm not fussed about Boubacar Kamara coughing up the ball that leads to a goal in a game that we ended up winning anyway. And I say that because Boubacar Kamara just turned 24 years of age this past week. Is Boubacar Kamara at this stage of his life and his career farther along than Douglas Luiz was in the same period? Because I remember Douglas coughed the ball up an awful lot, or lost duels, or was bullied off the ball sometimes, and it led to goals. And look at Douglas Luiz today, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. Imagine if Kamara logs 2 more years, gets some of those mistakes out of the way, learns to shoulder check all the time. Imagine what kind of player we could have, even though it's not really fair to compare them because they're totally different footballers. And he had a 92% pass completion percentage in this game, many of those passes under enormous pressure. But unfortunately, the one that he didn't get right could have ramifications. And if we do happen to play in the playoffs against a very good Europa League team that dropped down, and maybe there's travel involved, and maybe we get eliminated in that series, well, then we may have to revisit. But until then, I'm willing to forgive Booba. Next up, the Cherries. And after a very difficult start to life at Bournemouth, Anthony Iraola has his team on a decent little run, which includes a win at Sheffield United the last weekend out, and before that, a very impressive home win 2-0 over Newcastle. Now, as a longtime Villa fan and observer, for some reason, this fixture just brings up poor feelings for me. We've played them 6 times in the Premier League and won twice. The first ever meeting in the Premier League, that was Rudy Gested, of course, and then the last meeting, the 3-0 win in March. But the last visit to the South Coast and that particular ground was the first game of last season, and we all remember how that went, with a thud. And what's weird is you'd think, a ground with a capacity of only 12,000, well, you'd think that's kind of a piece of piss. I mean, there's nothing hostile or daunting about any of this quaint little seaside town, lovely people, but behind that facade of vanilla lurks a monster. And this is how I feel about this game, the same way I felt about this Legia game, frankly. I think it's going to be horrible. I think it's going to be an awful experience that we're going to have to fight through in a grueling week that also includes Manchester City and Arsenal. And Unai Emery's biggest job this week is to say to his team, do not look past this game because it's less sexy than those ones. This is the next opponent in front of us. Prepare for it professionally and right the wrongs of some of our past, because this is the kind of game that traditionally would have haunted us upon our return to the Premier League. And if Villa is sharp and is able to navigate the shark-infested waters that they know they'll be facing on Sunday with physical battles, awful ones against guys like Solanke and Billing and Sinistera and Tavernier and that whole lot, well, imagine how well that will set up the rest of the week. And I would love to know what Unai Emery realistically expects from a point return perspective next week, because he'll never say it publicly. But if somebody offered you 5 points out of 9 next week, would you bite their arm off? Maybe I'm tempering my expectations a little bit here, but it all starts with that first hurdle and trying to get 3 points, because it would be so Villa from the old days to lose the game at Bournemouth and then go and get results against Manchester City and Arsenal. In a way, I feel kind of like the team. I'm gearing up for what is going to be a very demanding and challenging month ahead, where I have to try to turn around shows really quickly and in a timely fashion, and hopefully they're fun and entertaining and interesting, while trying to keep up with all the holiday festivities and entertaining that we're going to do. In fact, our entertaining season kicks off on Saturday with the first do in our household. I'm flexing my liver in preparation. Until the Bournemouth game, be well, enjoy your decorating, and as always, up the mighty Villa.